My name is Liba Furhman, and I'm the chairman of the Riverfront Revitalization Committee. And I want to welcome you here tonight on this freezing cold evening. And to those of you who are going to be watching this on tape in the comfort of your home, welcome too. Our first speaker who I'd like to introduce is the mayor of New Milford, Pete Bass. Pete has been working with us on this project for years, since he first became mayor, and is intricately involved in being informed on all of our steps and all of our proposals. So welcome, Mayor Bass.
Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. For those that are going to be watching this video replay, welcome. Mayor, thank you to you and to your committee for your continuing efforts of bringing Riverfront Revitalization to our constituency, our public. And I might add that this project will be with the approval of our public, our citizenry. And what's a great chance is to see the opportunity of what could be transformative, a wonderful opportunity to see tonight. And we have our consultants here. We're going to talk a little bit more about this wonderful opportunity. One thing that I've stressed before in other events, does everybody remember where they were in February 2000? Raise your hand if you remember where you were in February 2000. The reason why I bring that up is, we're closer to the year 2050 today than we were in the year 2000. So think about that. Think about how quick that time went. Think about our forefathers who planned our town. And think about the opportunity of what we can leave, the legacy that we can leave for the best town in the USA. So again, thank you for coming tonight. Mayor, thank you and the committee. And look forward to our consultants talking a little bit more. Thank you. God bless.
So once again, welcome. We're here to talk about New Milford's Riverfront Revitalization Project. This project came about in 2016 when a company called Panda Power wanted to build on Century Brass in New Milford. And the then mayor at the time had them bring that proposal forward to the public. There was a huge outcry. It was a 500 megawatt combined cycle gas to energy plant that would have had smokestacks 200 to 300 feet high spewing all over downtown New Milford. In 6 weeks, public gathered together, were informed, found out about the project, went to Panda Power informational meetings, and at the end of that 6 weeks, they withdrew because they knew they were not going to get an approval. Century Brass was and is a town-owned property, so nothing could have happened there without a town vote. But it became clear that the town had no plan for the riverfront, for the whole area. And so the mayor at the time, David Gromback, we approached him and asked him to form a committee so we could begin planning. And that committee has been going now for, how many years is that? I'm not good at math. 8 years, I think. So this is kind of where we stand today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project's funding, about the project, its history, the public and how the public gets involved, about the presentation you're about to hear, and how we're going to address questions. This project has been funded by state and federal grants. No local tax dollars have gone towards the planning and the design. We received initially $170,000 as a brownfield planning grant, and that's where we came up with the conceptual plan that was also done by WXYZ. We received through the town the Federal American Rescue Grant money that was appropriated towards this project. And then the state of Connecticut, through their Brownfield Assessment Program, gave us $200,000. That money was given to the Corporation for Economic Development, and they are working with that consultant to analyze the public works facility properties. So as I said, we were appointed in 2017, originally as a temporary committee, and in 2020, the town council passed an ordinance making us a permanent committee. In 2021, the town council adopted the conceptual plan that was put forward by WXY. We spent some time refining that conceptual plan, and then in 2024, as I said, the corporation got a grant for brownfield assessment. And in 2025, we retained WXY and their partner in this project, Langan Engineering. So our mission, and you might hear this again to refresh your memory later, our mission is to create a dynamic 21st century riverfront that is integrated and works together with the town center. This will help catalyze community development. It will be sustainable. It will generate revenue, and it will protect the Housatonic River and its ecosystem. As Mayor Bass said, this is a long-range plan. We've already been working for 8 years. It will take probably that long to come to fruition. Parts of it might start sooner than later, but it will be a staged and phased plan for the future of New Milford. Whoops. Okay. Our committee was appointed by the town council, and we have members of the committee tonight. I'd ask you to raise your hands so people can see where you are. So later, if way up high, don't be shy. So if people want to talk with you later, they will have that opportunity. Our task is to drive the vision while we balance the needs of the town, and we ensure cohesive actions throughout the town on this project. We work to implement the plan step by step, and one of the big steps is identifying funding sources for this, including grants and incentives. This plan is ever evolving. The first plan that we came out with had a pedestrian bridge over the Housatonic River. That was fabulous, but it was a lot of money and a lot of permitting. So as we moved along, we refined that plan. We brought elements into scale. We realized we had to have design and engineering so that we could move forward. We could have a plan, because you can't get money from anyone unless you have a concrete plan. Usually they want the project to be shovel ready before they give you money. And to attract the appropriate development partners if and when the town decides that they'd like to do some development there. We finally have a survey. We did not have a survey of all of this property, so it was really impossible to even, you could have plans, but would they work? So we are convinced, and we know that whatever we're going to be presenting later tonight is feasible and will be able to be implemented. We're making progress slowly but surely. As many of you know, we've developed, I call it Lucy's Walk because it came from one of our committee members, Lucy, the idea to make a trail between Patriots Way that goes all the way down to the river trail and connects to the river trail. It's a 1-mile loop. We have a new 911 memorial. We have connectivity to Native Meadows, which is that large conservation piece kind of across from Big Y. And you can just walk across Veterans Bridge now, and there's a sidewalk that takes you right into the property. As you know, Patriots Way has been improved. We have a bee garden there because we're the bee city, and some other amenities, and we're working on the brownfield assessment. We're working together, the Riverfront Committee, with town residents, with the mayor and the town council, with the Corporation for New Milford Economic Development. We've met with the Development Services team, and we will be meeting with them once again to make sure that everything complies with regulations and is deemed to be safe and feasible. And we also are working, as I've said, with our planning and engineering expert consultants. Our current steps, we're finalizing the plan, and we're here to get your input tonight. And for those of you at home, I will, in a few minutes, be telling you how you can give us your input directly. We're developing a financial framework. Everyone wants to know how much is it going to cost and how are we going to pay for it. So we're working on that as well to present. We're researching grant and funding opportunities. We will have to get town approvals. As I said, we're going to meet with DST to make sure that we're complying with regulations. There's a whole regulatory framework up there. Being on the Housatonic Riverbank, we will have to deal with the Department of Environment and Energy of the state of Connecticut. We'll also have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers and possibly some other state or federal agencies. So we're putting together all of those steps. We will do some developer outreach, talk with developers, see what they think is feasible, see if it meets the town's needs, see how they can contribute to paying for this project, and we will be putting together a staged implementation plan. But what has to happen first is that the town needs to identify a new home for the softball fields and a new home for public works. Town residents and taxpayers, as the mayor said, you have the last say. You have the final word. This is not a done deal. You're here tonight to provide input. We've been receiving input over the whole course of this planning process, and you can still continue to give us input. In accordance with the town charter, any expenditure outside of the budget over, and I can't remember the threshold amount, but it has to go to a town meeting. So we just can't say we want to spend $1 million on this project and not have town meeting approval. The same goes if we want to sell or lease any of the town-owned properties. That has to go to a town meeting. The town council does not have the jurisdiction, nor does the mayor, to just enter into lease or sales agreements of property. And the other thing that you can all do is join our volunteer efforts. If you want to help us out on Riverfest, if you want to, help sponsor some informational meetings, you're more than welcome to. We're working today, as I said, with two wonderful consulting companies, the firm of WXY and David Vega-Barachowitz is going to be presenting to you. He is the project manager. He's here today with Moon and Jordan in the back. So later on, if you want to talk with them, they're here as well. WXY is amazing. It's an international award-winning design firm who has done, I can't even count how many riverfront projects around the country, but they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves soon. Chris McLean is here. He's a traffic engineer. And Brian Phillips, who is a civil engineer. Again, Langan is an international firm. They have a very large office here in New Haven, Connecticut. They worked with us on traffic studies, engineering. They did the survey. They've done environmental and drainage studies, and all of that will be incorporated into the plan that you're about to see. After the presentation, you're welcome to ask questions. And then we're going to break into a little bit of an open house where you can meet with committee members and our experts. We have some exhibits there for you to look at. We have places for you to comment. We have comment cards. For those who are not here in person and you'd like to give us comments, you can either mail them to Riverfront at 10 Main Street, New Milford, that's Town Hall, or you can email us at riverfront@newmilford.org. So we have two ways for those of you who are watching to get in touch with us. And worst comes to worst, you forget these, call the mayor's office, and I'm sure his staff would be so glad to get phone calls and refer them on to us. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you for watching us. And I'm going to introduce David from WXY. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here tonight, and thank you for the gracious introduction, Liba. I just want to say before we start, thank you for coming out on such a cold night. I know this isn't the perfect weather for a public meeting, but really appreciate your commitment, and also just to thank all the Riverfront Committee members. It's really been a pleasure kind of collaborating with you all over the past year or so. We are in our second community workshop, and we were here in May, so back slightly under a year to kind of report back some of the initial ideas, concepts, and proposals that we've really been refining over that period. I'm going to start just by giving a little presentation about the project. For those of you who may be here for your first time at a public meeting, just want to give you a sense of what we've been looking at. I'll then turn it over to Chris McLean from Langan to walk everybody through a traffic study that we've done that really helps to kind of inform and support some of the recommendations that we have. And then we'll take a little Q&A before moving into an open house. Liba gave us a great introduction in terms of the two design firms, but WXY, we're a multidisciplinary team. We've worked on riverfronts all around the country, the Toledo Riverwalk, the Battery in New York City along the East River, and Langan has done some incredible work, including right here in Connecticut, doing the planning for Riverbend Park in Middletown, just a kind of subset of some of the work that we all have been doing. You have an incredible site and a really, really, truly a once-in-a-generation opportunity to define the future of New Milford's riverfront and really the town as a whole. It's over 50 plus acres of publicly owned riverfront land. And I can tell you from working around the country that this is really rare to have this much really, really prime open space within town control. That gives us the opportunity to fulfill and support the mission that we've set forth here, which is, as Liba mentioned, creating the most dynamic 21st century riverfront that really brings New Milford's town center into contact with the Housatonic River, a promise that was established as part of WXY's original riverfront renewal plan back in 2020. We're lucky to also be building on a legacy of great work going back to the 2010 and even beyond to some of the earlier advocacy around the riverfront, and have really benefited not only from some of our own past work, some of the work that SLR and others have done, but a lot of the kind of understanding of where New Milford's economic market, its market potential is going, how the demographics are changing, what we're seeing in terms of the larger opportunity for the town as a whole. As I mentioned, we were last here really presenting kind of our initial understanding of the site and our inspirations for what could go into this plan back in May of last year. And we are here at a more advanced stage. We're about 50%, 75% through our design development phase. So what we're presenting today is really the result of a series of deep conversations with the Riverfront Committee, with stakeholders, understanding the survey results, and we'll be moving from here based on the comments that we hear tonight and over the next couple of months into a kind of implementation framework to move this project forward. The project is really kind of grounded in 6 key principles. The idea that we want to advance a multifunctional riverfront that can meet the needs of a range of different audiences, activities, and seasons. Something that, as Liba mentioned, is implementable and achievable. And now, working with Langan, we've really tried to devise something that we know can be implemented. Working through an understanding of how to integrate natural areas and ecosystems into our planning work and design work. Thinking about the opportunities to make the town center more multimodal, accommodating the needs of parking, but also of people that maybe want to bike through the site or take a bus. Thinking through a riverfront that's accessible, universally accessible to people who are using it, as well as experiential, offering something that may not exist in the town today or may exist in places that you've been to and that we can learn from. And that's really sustainable and innovative, really at the forefront of thinking about the kind of future of riverfront design, looking towards 2050, as the mayor said. And there's a really critical opportunity here to unlock a greater public benefit by leveraging the forward-thinking design approach that I'm going to present tonight to really stake out what the kind of next generation of New Milford may look like. As I mentioned, we've heard a tremendous amount over the past several months And back in June, not May, sorry about that, we had an amazing workshop where we really heard a tremendous amount of different ideas. People looked at different precedents for riverfronts around the country and provided some really fantastic, substantial feedback on kind of how we could start to think about different ways of shaping the kind of contours of the riverfront and the different programs that could be on the riverfront. And then in parallel to that, we had an online survey, which we received over 400 responses to over a period of 7 weeks. And just about 97% of folks that took that were full-time Town of New Milford residents. And we heard a lot in the survey. In some sense, that confirmed some of the things that we heard at the public meeting. In other cases, there were some new ideas that we heard. A lot of focus on natural areas and really creating a kind of a great space for passive recreation, the need for water fountains and restrooms, a desire to see more cultural programs and outdoor theater. And people mentioned even Shakespeare in the Park is something that could happen here. And some of the more basic things like, we want more shade, more seating, better stormwater management. We also heard a lot of significant challenges, a deep concern around traffic congestion and access, in these kind of periods when the park is busiest, around Riverfest and other times. How do we manage that traffic? How do we think about congestion in the context of this kind of new riverfront space? And Chris McLean is going to talk a little bit about what we found in our traffic study, as well as flooding and some environmental concerns. How can this really be at the vanguard of thinking about the latest and greatest in green infrastructure and stormwater management? And we've captured a range of different quotes, positive and negative, things that people expressed aspirations for, things that people expressed concerns for. And collectively, there were some really important themes that stood out to us in that sort of engagement process. There was a really deep interest in thinking about landscapes that could be floodable, but also really embrace conservation along the river's edge. Some support for really thinking about different kinds of development on the DPW site, the Department of Public Works site, and the storage areas. And then a really strong demand for just basic park amenities. How do we kind of think beyond the baseball fields that are there today to have more seating, restrooms, programs, public art. And so a lot of ideas around that. So I want to now turn it over to Chris McLean to talk a little bit about what we found from our traffic study. Before Chris jumps in, I just want to note that one of the things that we heard both in our conversations with the Riverfront Committee as well as at our first public workshop was how important it was that as we think about all of the potential great improvements that we could look at for this riverfront, that we also make sure to account for the negative externalities that may result from a traffic perspective. And I think what Langan, who's been an amazing partner, has done is really take a holistic kind of network-based approach to understanding the traffic ecosystem of downtown to help inform and facilitate the design that we're going to present. So with that, I'll turn it to Chris.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris McLean, as David and Liba have introduced. I'm with Langan Engineering, professional traffic engineer in Connecticut with Langan, like I said. And so I just want to, talk at a high level about the traffic study as a whole, and then kind of give you some examples of things that we had looked at to kind of inform us and guide us through the whole process of the implementation of this master plan. And we'll just get right into it. So, we have to, traffic engineers, we have to start with data. We're very data oriented. So what we do is first we look at what are the intersections that are closest to, a site like this, and which ones are going to be the most heavily impacted from, a project like this. And so we really focused on the intersections that are closest to the site. that would be seeing the most traffic in and out. So we really focused on Bridge Street, and we looked at all of the traffic light intersections all the way from Route 7 all the way as far east as East Street. And then we also looked at East and Elm to the north. So we really cast a wide net to look and focus and make sure that we were looking at this from, all angles, so that we could really understand what the existing traffic issues are to better inform us kind of into the future. So again, a lot of numbers, but what this represents is when we went out and we did some traffic counts, we set up video cameras at every intersection. We actually counted cars at all of the intersections. And what we really did was we focused on 3 specific time periods. And this is generally accepted practice in the traffic engineering world. But what we do is we focus on the morning rush hour, the evening rush hour, and then Saturday right around midday when everybody's out eating lunch. And so those are what's known as our peak hours, right? And so we really focus on those because that's when traffic is the heaviest around here. And that would be the most sensitive to any changes in traffic, so that we could really understand what the delta is from existing to proposed. And what that showed us was Patriots Way itself is actually really underutilized. There's less than 100 vehicles that go in and out over the course of an hour. I think that's primarily due to existing congestion on Bridge Street, Route 202. But what we also saw was that there was 300 to 400 vehicles that used Youngsfield Road, to kind of going north and south to get in and out. And then we also focused a lot on Railroad Street, mostly because it's close proximity to downtown. And, that's the intersection that would be seeing quite a lot of change in traffic as well. So a lot of the side streets, we'll call them, Youngsfield Road, Patriots Way, and Railroad Street, we really focused on those because that's kind of the ingress and egress for, this new park that we're looking at. And then we also consider truck traffic as well. There's about 5 to 6% of truck traffic over the course of an hour. It's really not all that much, but it is there, so it was a consideration as part of our existing analysis. And so what we did is we're going to go back to grade school here, and we're going to grade things from letter A to letter F. And that's called level of service for traffic engineers. A letter grade A is great, essentially no traffic whatsoever, and then level of service F is obviously the worst. And so you can kind of see on a continuum here that some of the intersections, they're level of service C and D, and then specifically at Railroad Street, that's an E, which is kind of towing the line of becoming worse, and then some of them are operate okay. They're A's and B's, and so this kind of gives us a good idea of specifically Route 202, Bridge Street, about how that works under existing conditions, right? And what the existing congestion looks like. And we don't just take the letter grades at face value. We dive into the numbers and we look at it. We even watch the videos from the traffic counts to really understand what's going on here. And, I've been stuck in it too. I'm sure you guys are stuck in it every day, but Route 202, there's traffic all the time. So if I come up here and tell you that it's a letter A, I know that you guys would, you guys would know better. So what I'm here saying is I see it. I see the congestion that you see almost every day. And what we think we could do, at least from the main corridor, is there are some things that we could implement today without this project that can help kind of progress traffic through the network a little bit. We work with Connecticut DOT a lot. We work with the town engineer to just kind of give a few recommendations. But this existing analysis is the first step in seeing what the future can hold with this new project. So what we really need to do, while we can make some recommendations now, what we're trying to do is understand what's out there today so that we don't make things worse, and we can actually hope to make things a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. And then I know I talked a lot about the Bridge Street itself, but the side streets, Youngsfield Road, Patriots Way, and Railroad Street, those are where, you might be stuck in traffic on Bridge Street, but if you're on the side street, it can be difficult to actually get out onto the main road. So we found that numerically, right? We found that, which confirmed kind of what we had been seeing and what you see on a day-to-day basis. And so the last piece of our existing analysis, right, for us to get a really good idea of what's out there today, is we went out, we did a parking analysis. And so looking here, we looked at 3 different specific areas. 2 were on Youngsfield Road. Some of the parallel parking that's on there, we split it up into, the east side of the west side. And then we looked at Patriots Way itself. Patriots Way is technically a road, but it operates much like a parking lot. And what we found was, there's peaks and valleys of utilization of the parking throughout the day. There's a peak around lunchtime, and then there's a quite heavy peak around dinner time. And what we found was people are using Patriots Way to go downtown. They find parking there, they walk across the railroad, and then they can go eat dinner or whatever at downtown. So this essentially confirmed that where people are using the existing parking areas, and it also told us the utilization. So actually there was only a maximum right around 7 o'clock of about 56% of the parking spaces were occupied. When I look at a parking area, anything that's over like 80 to 85%, that's what I consider full. So there's actually, under existing conditions, there's a little bit of extra available parking from our perspective that we could utilize with this new park. The other piece here is, and we can get into it in the future, but when we see parking here being utilized for like downtown, we're very careful to recommend any sort of reduction in parking, specifically because we know that we're not trying to take food out of anybody's mouth, especially the businesses downtown. What we want to do is we want to allow this parking area to be fully utilized by both downtown and have the ability for people to continue to park there using it as they are, while also giving us the ability to put in this big, beautiful park. So kind of serving both purposes at the same time. So that's existing. Just to give you a really good sense that, we got our arms around everything. We know from a numeric and qualitative perspective, kind of how traffic operates around downtown here. So looking ahead, working with the town and WXY, they're looking kind of how do we put this park together? And so we looked at 2 main focuses for options as far as parking and circulation. And I mentioned circulation. There's 3 main things we like to look at. We look at safety, we look at access, and then we look at circulation. Those are the 3 big things when we're kind of in the planning mode. We want to make sure that people can be safe when they're accessing the site. We want to make sure that there's good vehicular and pedestrian circulation. And then we want to make sure that there's good access, that people can actually get here without being stuck in traffic all the time. And so on the left, we have option A. This is our recommended option. This is the actual relocation of Youngsfield Road. And so there's a few different pros and cons to each of these. And so the main pro for the relocation of Youngsfield Road is actually the consolidation of traffic on these side streets to one location. Whereas now Youngsfield Road and Patriots Way are separate. And what happens there is that there's actually multiple ways for you to get to Bridge Street. And that kind of division creates additional congestion on the road where, you might have people trying to, stop and let people in or let people out, stuff like that. If we can focus it in one area, that actually helps reduce congestion. The other thing here is Youngsfield Road. If you've ever driven on it going south towards the bridge, you know that there's about 7 signs that say you can't turn left. I've watched the videos. I know that many people do it, but there's a safety reason for it. It's not just because there's so much traffic. It's because if you have done it, you can't see over the bridge, and it's actually a safety issue. And so the closeness of the road to the bridge actually presents a safety issue. And so we, from a safety aspect, that kind of raised a red flag, and we said, listen, we might be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. We can consolidate the traffic into one access point, and we could also eliminate like a safety issue with the no left turn onto Bridge Street. The other opportunity we get with the consolidation with option A is we're actually close enough to the railroad and to Railroad Street itself to where it actually would become part of a traffic light intersection, a big traffic light intersection at the at Railroad Street, Patriots Way, and Bridge Street, where the DOT would support something like that. If we don't have them consolidated, from a traffic engineering perspective, if there's nobody ever on the side street because we've split traffic up, there's actually not a good reason to have a traffic light there. It could be the DOT likes to, since this is their road, they like to see a high enough volume to allow such a thing. The other option that we looked at was at least from a traffic perspective, very similar to what's out there today. We would keep Youngsfield Road in the, in existence. What we would look at is potentially maybe shifting it further away from the bridge, but unfortunately, due to the hill, there's actually not enough room for us to shift it far enough away from the bridge to still allow for, or to then allow for a left-hand turn. So there would, while we could improve the situation, we would still have that safety issue of the inability to see over the bridge there. And then, like I mentioned, if we continue to have these roads be separate, the traffic volumes individually are so low that the DOT wouldn't consider a traffic light there. So when we looked at option A and option B, we thought it would be really, I think, important to the town from a flow and traffic perspective to actually get a traffic light at Patriots Way, which would allow for at least people to stop and allow for the even flow of traffic in and out of the site, which would actually, I think, help improve circulation here. And these are kind of some of the things that I just kind of mentioned. There's quite a lot of congestion that I think we've seen. The other thing I'll mention is that right now, a good traffic light corridor, what we'll call, is Bridge Street, where they have multiple traffic lights kind of consecutively in a row. From a traffic engineering perspective, what I'd love to do is have all of them talk to one another so that when you get a green light, the next ones actually turn green as well, which allow kind of a slug of cars to come all the way out. Right now, Railroad Street is coordinated. They are talking to Main Street, but it hasn't been looked at in maybe 10 years, and I know traffic evolves. So with or without this project, we would be suggesting something like that. But what doesn't exist today is they're not all talking all the way out to East Street. So you can kind of we could take a holistic look here, and not only could we solve, I guess, the existing issues of some of the congestion, but we could try to look a little ahead to get traffic kind of flowing in both directions. And don't get me wrong, we're not going to be looking at level of service A's and B's on this street. The existing, the bridge itself is kind of a coalescence point where so many people are trying to get over the river, which I'm sure you guys see every day. But what we can do is we can try to help improve some of the existing condition issues that we have out there today, while also helping to implement this beautiful master plan for some of the for this park here. So this kind of shows, where a traffic light would be if we were to put it in and relocate Youngsfield Road up to Patriots Way. So on the previous slide, I showed, the angle where the Youngsfield Road would connect up to Patriots Way, and then they would end up at a traffic light, and we'd end up with a kind of a large intersection with West Street, Patriots Way, Railroad Street, and Middle Street, all kind of operating as one. And we would be working with the town and with the DOT to implement such a thing. The DOT does own the road. So they would be a partner in order to implement such a thing. But in our discussions with them, they seemed open to option A, and would actually recommend it if we were to want to do a traffic light there. And I know lots of numbers, but what the big thing here is that when we do put in the traffic light, our numerical analysis shows that we're actually able to take Railroad Street, which is a level service E today, and actually bring it up to a level service C. So we jump up 2 letter grades. We studied for our test. We passed now, but there's still some congestion here. But what we're allowing is a little bit more consolidation of traffic in order to kind of smooth things out, so that there's more openings and easier ways for people to get onto the road. And so that's kind of from our perspective as traffic engineers, that's the goal here, is to kind of do 2 things at once. We're trying to look at the existing congestion issues and try to improve those, but also we can do that and have a big beautiful park that does improve some of the traffic circulation that we've got out there. So with that, I'll turn it back over to David to get into the actual design studies to look at what the master plan will look like. Thank you.
I am a little shorter than Chris, and I have no report card jokes, so I apologize in advance. Thank you so much, Chris. I know traffic studies can be dense, but I think for this whole team, this particular one was truly a huge unlock, because one of the things that we heard from the start in our first public workshop and through the survey was how important it was for people to see a more direct connection between the town and the river's edge. So I want to walk you through our latest design proposal, which we have segmented into these 4 areas. The first area looks at Youngsfield itself, and really thinks about how we can create a kind of world-class riverfront park. The second, which I will go into in a little bit of detail, but not a ton, and happy to answer questions after the presentation on, is the area around the Department of Public Works storage and facilities site, which is envisioned as some open space and some mixed use development. The third, around Helen Marks, is a concentration of activities focused on active recreation, much like what's there today, but improved. And the fourth at Native Meadows is a conservation area that would have enhanced access, new pathways, and boardwalks. So this is the overall riverfront design that we have set forth for discussion, feedback, commenting today. And it reflects, as Chris mentioned, that option A. So the configuration where Youngsfield Road connects to Patriots Way and creates that clustered signal that creates a cross intersection with West Street with a signal, which is, again, the team looking at the traffic studies and what that enables, really use that as a sort of basis for our design work, while also exploring a range of other potential alternatives. As Chris mentioned, the roadway configuration would be different from what's there today, and it would essentially take Youngsfield Road, make a diagonal connection up to a redesigned Patriots Way, which would still have actually more parking than is there today, and then would tee at West Street. There would still be Fire Road access along the current Youngsfield Road, which would be redesigned and traffic calmed to be an integral part of the park. And as I mentioned, there's actually, in the overall plan with this reconfiguration, a net 86 plus 86 parking spaces that we would create. And that is not counting the parking spaces that would accompany the mixed-use development that's envisioned in that second area that I mentioned. I'd like to quickly go through the kind of different assets and ideas that we've translated into a kind of initial program plan for the park, focusing on flexible and multifunctional open spaces, kind of getting back to that initial principle that we set forth, enhanced access and riverfront trails, nature-based activities like kayaking and nature centers, and park amenities and installations. And to do that, I'm going to dive in, kind of zoom into the park itself. And just as a kind of reference point, this is what the park looks like today, that kind of single staircase with a steep bluff that separates the town from the park, and a series of ball fields with some limited programming like skate park and a playground. And this is a rendering showing what the park could look like in the future. Hopefully not 2050, hopefully sooner than that, but really emphasizing a kind of direct, meaningful connection with multiple points of access for all people of all ages and abilities, with a range of different programs, whether that be playscapes, places for performance, nature education centers, kayaking, and I'll step you through all of the different things that we've built into this design in a moment. So walking through the different kind of programs and areas of the park one by one, I just want to kind of quickly note some of the things that we've designed in here, why we've designed them, and different projects that you're seeing on the left that maybe kind of call forth an inspiration or something that you've seen. The Flex Lawn is the centerpiece of the park. So one of the things that we really worked hard to preserve with Liba and the Riverfront Committee is a space that could be multi-purpose, flexible for large events and festivals, while also creating something that can serve as a kind of platform for people playing Frisbee, pickup football, going out and having larger festivals. But that also kind of creates a kind of large natural stage encircled by a kind of denser tree canopy. As part of that, we also created a slight mound that could have a kind of signature public artwork, a gateway public artwork on the top of it, and also serve as a sled hill, that kind of red mound, that sort of red dot that you're seeing there. We've integrated a new amphitheater and stage into the park that takes advantage of the natural bluff that's there today, but then transforms it into a place that could be used for Shakespeare in the park, for performances, for music. This might be also multifunctional for people that are, just looking for a place to exercise or to picnic, and creates kind of a great vantage point for sunsets downtown. That would be combined with a stage that has a green room and public restrooms, and potentially a concession space as well. We have worked with Langan to reimagine the bluff that's there today, which is quite steep and inaccessible, with a series of switchback paths that would kind of snake down to the kind of primary lawn that I mentioned. And also have a series of kind of natural features and native plantings built into it. This would be combined. The staircase that you see that's sort of most directly connecting to the town center is essentially where the staircase is today, widened and reimagined, with a series of landscape paths that make it a really beautiful kind of approach and transition between the town, the parking lot, and the riverfront. And then we've also integrated some smaller scale programs, like the idea of something fun and playful, like a slide that kind of can use that slope, a sledding hill in the winter, that can really bring that space to life while taking advantage of the topography that's there today. We, hearing from both the survey and the last public workshop, a deep commitment to the environmental potential of the site and the flooding issues that occur there today, we're very careful in working with Brian Phillips, our civil engineer, to think creatively about stormwater connections, stormwater management, and river's edge improvements that can really ensure that this whole space functions as a kind of sponge park that is really retaining water in select places, while ensuring that the rest of the park remains dry and usable, which isn't always the case today during heavy storm events. And in this location, we imagined a kind of stormwater catchment area that could also kind of reimagine a typology of bridge that's known well in New Milford today, with a kind of re-envisioned covered walkway. And then enabled by some of the traffic changes that have been suggested by Chris and the Langan team, we really wanted to embrace the idea that there could be an expanded and renaturalized riverfront edge, potentially integrating a kind of nature center, or at the very least, a kind of nature pavilion that could bring people, make the river's edge a destination, more of a kind of passive space with swings, places to walk and exercise, as well as a kind of parallel bike trail that parallels what's there today. And along that edge, we really see an opportunity to think creatively about areas where people can actually step down to the river's edge, not necessarily swim in the river, but kayak in the river and really interact with it in a more tangible way. And then we have not their exact location, but we've maintained many of the programs that people use and love today, including the skate park, which could be redesigned and reimagined, a destination playground for family with proximity to restrooms and parking lot, and a dog run that could be, interacting with the playground but not combined. We've also set aside a number of locations where there could be concessions, restrooms, really to activate the park, and especially seasonally provide some spaces for people to get a snack, a drink, and this is something that we'll continue to work with you on. We want to hear more about what kind of food, beverage, restroom options we want to have in the park itself. And then throughout the park, we've envisioned a number of special amenities, thinking about great kind of lounge seating, which is something that we heard people express a desire to see within the park. Swings was something also that came up, and we were really excited about combining that with shade at kind of great spots to watch the sunrise or the sunset. And so there are a lot of these little opportunities to kind of create unique spaces within the park. And then I mentioned a nature pavilion, so something that could be a space for events, could be a great place to take pictures, a place to get out of the rain, and potentially combining that with a storage shed for parks maintenance. And then along the kind of primary walk of the park, where essentially today there's Youngsfield Road, we've imagined an interactive art installation. A lot of people in our first public workshop on the survey expressed a really deep desire to bring public art into the park, which was something that was really exciting to us. Also, a great opportunity for collaboration with existing arts groups and museums that are in the region today. And this is a view from the top of the bluff. You can see the sort of seating area. I'm sure some of you have sat there before to watch a ball game. And this is in roughly the same spot, the kind of reimagining of that bluff overlooking a performance area. You can see in the bottom left the kind of reinterpreted covered bridge, as well as the mixed use area, which is where the the Department of Public Works site is today, with 3 to 4 story mixed use buildings. And then this is a view of the riverfront today, again, kind of showing a kayak launch overlooking Bridge Street. And this is a view of that, sort of showing that nature pavilion, which could have a green roof and some active space for events, step downs, and a renaturalized edge with riprap and boardwalks along the water's edge. I mentioned that the other portion of the site that we've been looking at, which is essentially contiguous with the Department of Public Works site, the storage area and the kind of primary facilities area that's there today, which doesn't overlap with the park and probably most people haven't really walked through or seen much of. We have been interviewing a range of folks with a deeper knowledge of the regional market to understand what some of the potentials for this space are in terms of mixed use. Building on some of the prior studies and recommendations, we've really been looking at something in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 units of housing, some of which would be clustered townhome housing that's maybe a little bit more targeted at families. We've heard a lot of enthusiasm for senior housing and other condo development. This is something that we'll continue to deepen our research into alongside the sort of further development of the park, but is an important part of the kind of financial understanding of the feasibility of the project. And then we've also really taking some of the kind of active recreation programs that are on Youngs Field today and thought that there was an opportunity to centralize some of that within town-owned land in and around Helen Marks Park. So really thinking about creating a kind of cluster of sports amenities that could be improved comprehensively, including a ball field, a soccer field with better drainage, another kayak launch on the Aspetuck, and tennis pickleball courts with a new restroom as another piece of the project. One thing I will note, and we had a great turnout from folks who have been really deeply involved in the trail system along the riverfront, is that we have kind of penciled in land that isn't really part of our project, the potential to have that connection. So we are thinking about connections for bikes, for cyclists, rollerbladers as a larger part of the project that may evolve in the future. And then lastly, the Native Meadows area is really a fantastic opportunity to bring the kind of conservation values that have guided this project from its start to the fore, creating more accessible paths, boardwalks, and access points to really bring this space to life while keeping kind of what makes it special intact. So before we move to a Q&A, I just want to note a little bit of kind of what awaits you in the next room. So we have boards that really go into a little bit more depth, a little bit more detail on everything that we've talked through tonight, from the design studies, the programming that I walked you through, the traffic, and the environmental and stormwater considerations. We're really excited to get your comments, your feedback. This is an iterative live process. And so, it's great both for those in the room and, those online to hear that feedback so that we can continue improving and advancing what we think is a really special and transformative project for the town. So with that, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. We also did a fly-through. So I know that I was talking to a lot of plans, and Chris even more so, but we did a brief, okay, I got that right. Didn't think I would get that right. Brief fly-through, not in quite as much detail, but just to give everybody a sense of what the whole project looks like. We have that going in the other room, so if you miss it here, you can watch it on loop in the other room. And my apologies, we don't have any fun music to go along with it. I pushed for it. So yeah, and again, what you're seeing here is just kind of a bird's eye fly through, showing the core of the park, the kind of wetland walk or riverfront edge, the kind of primary assets of the project with a little bit less detail than what I showed you previously in some of the renderings, the snack shack, the public artwork. Again, that's not a commissioned public artwork. That's just sort of an example. A little bit of that kind of winding switchback path to create universal access, the covered bridge, the amphitheater, and a little bit of a glimpse of the mixed use area, which really tries to work with the topography to essentially kind of maintain sight lines from the top of the bluff towards the river. And you can see that overall, this is sort of swing stepping down to the river's edge. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the end of the video, and I will. Great. Okay. Now that's the end of the video. All right. So I want to invite Brian, Chris, and I think Liba just to join me for a Q&A, and happy to take about 15 minutes or so of questions. And then we're also happy to answer more questions in the other room if you want to go into a little bit more detail.
This is all wonderful, but I only had one concern. Why do they have to be such high buildings for those multi-use area? It's really, I mean, my personal reaction, everything's wonderful, and then you get that, and that's a real blight. Why do they have to be high and big? Why can't they be like more, like less visible? And the second question, I am a kayaker, and the river is nothing but silt. I was part of the Housatonic Valley Paddle Club. We built the original ramp, and that lasted 5 minutes. After the next rainstorm, you're up to your, in mud, and that's just the nature of that. So I was just wondering how they're going to. And right now, there's a funny little launch thing, this little plastic thing you have to kind of shimmy in. What would be plans to do that to really make it kayakable? Because right now, there's no place to really put in other than that little plastic thing, which is hard to get in and out of. Those are my 2 questions.
Great, thank you. I will answer your second question first. Okay, there were 2 questions. My apologies if I repeat them wrong. The first was on the sort of feasibility of the kayak launch, given that there are some sort of challenges with the current today. And the first was about the kind of contextual quality of some of the housing and mixed-use development that's proposed. So to your second question on kayaking, one of the things that the project does reimagine would be a permanent kayak launch that would have a removable launch point, essentially, and which could be accessible. That would be something that I think, based on our initial analysis, would actually be angled away from the current of the river. In the project I mentioned in Toledo, we had experience with a very similar condition on the Maumee River there, where we were able to install one that actually offered accessible kayaking that could be kind of intergenerational. And so that's something that we've thought about at a conceptual level in the project. The details of how that would actually integrate into the river flow, and really understanding the precise placement of that and some of the challenges you mentioned would be a kind of next phase of design. On mixed use development, one of the challenges that was put forth to us when we started this project was really to think of it as a public-private partnership. Projects like this that we see around the country have really embraced that model, not only to help pay for some of the upfront capital costs that go into a park like this, but that also really think about the long-term operational needs and maintenance needs of a park. And
Why do they have to be so tall and big? Because that was my concern.
yeah, so our goal was really to nest and I'm happy to kind of walk you through the views a little bit more in more detail. We had a unit target based on sort of an initial financial analysis, which was around 200 to 250 units. And our goal in siting those buildings was to essentially place them in such a way that someone standing at the top of the bluff would be looking out clear over the roof of those buildings. And so the primary kind of larger format mixed use buildings that we're showing there, which at least in a preliminary way, many folks have noted might be best suited for senior housing or condos, is really designed in such a way so that if you are at the top of the bluff, that you're really looking out over those buildings. To meet our unit count, that sight line isn't perfectly clear, but that's our goal in terms of siting them. It's a contrast to what we had actually studied back in 2019, when the vision had been to put the mixed-use development right at the top of the bluff where the parking is. And when we looked back at that, we really felt like it was a sort of visual disruption and a barrier between the town center and the riverfront, and we wanted to keep that open. Does it have to be high at all? To meet the unit count that we set as a kind of internal constraint for the finances of this part of the project, that was the kind of massing that effectively kind of best suited that. We did include a number of what are called cluster houses or townhomes in the portion of the project that's off to the storage, in the current storage yard area. And there are configurations that might push more of the development a little bit further away from the park that we studied. We ultimately didn't embrace those because we think that there's an opportunity to marry some of that mixed-use development with more active ground floor programming that could bring restaurants or other amenities in proximity to the park and the town. And so that was a trade-off we considered and debated, both with the Riverfront Committee and internally. But I'm happy to get, we're here to get feedback and hear like, okay, if that doesn't feel like it's the right scale, that's something that we want to know. Thank you.
How do they account for the parking for the mixed-use people?
That parking, the parking for the mixed-use development was the question. How do we account for the parking for the mixed-use development? For the townhomes, those townhomes would have effectively driveway parking. So there would be integrated, like a pervious surface is what we'd kind of envision with permeable paving, planting on the front of those townhomes. People would drive right in. That would essentially be a kind of cul-de-sac because that road doesn't connect anyway. For the larger mixed-use developments, we have modeled those to have parking at ground level. And to the question previous, that's one of the trade-offs in terms of understanding, height. How much parking can we accommodate at the base of those buildings? Because there's a bluff there today, it's one of the site conditions that we're really trying to take advantage of. So putting as much parking and as many units below that sight line as we can. And we're actually able to fit it pretty well. And so we're able to more or less meet all the parking demands for the mixed use development within those buildings.
And that doesn't change your traffic arrays.
I'll let Chris respond to the traffic questions.
I'll give David a break. But no, to your question is, does the traffic study account for the units? And the numbers that I gave you, yes, it does. So from the letter grade E to C, with all the other changes that I noted, that accounts for the 250 units that David had mentioned.
Since you're up here, I have two parking questions. Sure. Or not parking, traffic questions. I was just curious, if you look ahead to like a scenario where the park is fully built, what the impact of traffic is going to be on the northern side of the park with all the very small roads that kind of feed, I imagine, taking Bennett Street to Railroad Street to Housatonic Avenue, cutting under the bridge. I mean, those are small roads, and I imagine there'd be an increase to some of that traffic, in the future. And then second, I don't know if you saw it in your analysis, but commuting home, for those who live on the east side of the river and north of town, turning left on Youngsfield Road bypasses all the congestion closer to town and on 202 to get north to head up into the Marial section. And so while I understand, the rerouting, and it seems like that's an opportunity, I'm just a little worried about sending all that commuting traffic in the evening more up to the railroad tracks before it kind of disperses.
Yeah. I'll repeat the question and abbreviated. But you had two questions. The second was about the rerouting of commuter traffic that turns left early coming over the bridge to go over Youngsfield Road and how that impacts on the other traffic. And then the other question was related to the smaller side streets further up Youngsfield Road and how the change in traffic kind of affects those. So with regard to Housatonic Ave and further up Youngsfield Road, we we think that traffic will still continue to use Youngsfield Road. One thing that we saw was there's actually a number of larger industrial type facilities, whether they're the nursery or DPW, stuff like that, that's further up Youngsfield Road. So we made sure that this future need would have to account for some of the truck traffic that currently uses it that would then be relocated. And so that kind of delta, not just truck traffic, but all traffic, that delta, it'll increase slightly, but we don't feel it'll, significantly change from what this is happening, because and this kind of leads into your second question, the way that we had designed or forecasted out this new traffic light, right? You're going to have a dedicated left turn lane kind of as far back as Youngsfield Road is today at that traffic light, that would allow for you essentially to turn onto the new Patriots Way and kind of get to where you're trying to go anyway. So if that kind of eliminates some of it might take you one extra traffic light to go, but the traffic light we're hoping is going to actually turn over a little bit faster and allow you to, actually get a green light to make that route. And then some of the other corridor changes we're hoping actually improves traffic kind of cohesively there. Yep. Oh, sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. The plan seems reasonable and pretty well thought out overall. But as you know, the land of steady habits, people don't like change. Have you, as part of your overall plan, have you put in any economic analysis indicating what the benefits long-term are for the city in terms of tax revenue and what you can anticipate from additional visitation, tourists, and those kind of things?
The question was whether or not a kind of deeper market analysis and potential understanding of the broader impact of these investments was part of our project. Unfortunately, this project scope did not include a kind of deeper analysis of, the potential financial impacts beyond what we studied related to the mixed-use development and its potential financial impact on the feasibility of the project as a whole. That said, there was a town-wide economic development study that did look at and provide a little bit more detailed information on New Milford's market as it's sort of been evolving since 2019. That was done by Camoy and Associates, and Liba, I'm sure, can answer additional questions on that. And I will say, from working on similar projects to this one, these kinds of investments are not only being made by all of your peer downtowns, towns, cities, small cities and large cities, to really think about how to increase investment, tourism, while also thinking more critically about investments that need to be made in environmental infrastructure. But also, we've seen tremendous examples of large-scale riverfront investments yielding new development, higher home values. There's a really deep kind of literature, which I'm happy to speak to you about, that kind of reflects that. And I think it's great that New Milford is at this moment, which I think is a really pivotal moment for the town, is thinking in the future in that way, because it will help to sustain the town's population, make it attractive for young people and new families, and really help to generate, further economic development and visitation in the town center. So I'm happy to speak with you in more detail after.
Good. Okay. Fantastic presentation. Very exciting.
Louder.
I'll repeat. Fantastic presentation. Very exciting. For the amphitheater, there are a number of living units on the top of the buildings facing the field. right across from Railroad Street along. How are the acoustics thought out of how that will travel up the hill to those units? Are there going to be set hours of use for the amphitheater? Are there any programs kind of thought through for that space? How does that look?
Liba, do you want to answer this a little bit? So the question, just to repeat it back to everyone, was about the amphitheater. So for folks that maybe live just across the railroad from there or nearby, are there going to be set hours, acoustical considerations related to the design of the amphitheater, or is there any kind of sense of the overall potential programming of that space and what it may mean for both the park itself and then its neighbors?
At this point in time, there are no rules, regulations, there's no design, there's no programming for there. But just like other town events, the concerts on the green, Rock the Block, which really does rock that block, let me tell you, they all end early. And I think that would be one of the conditions of doing things at the amphitheater also. We have to be cognizant of all the people that live off of Railroad Street on Housatonic Avenue. And, Rock the Block, you can hear almost all the way, from where they play all the way up to Main Street. So, we'll take that into consideration. And there will be rules. I mean, people, it's not just anyone can come and play anytime they want. There'll be a setup structure for that amphitheater to operate.
I'll also note that there are a range of different approaches to kind of acoustical design within parks. So the use of berms or trees to muffle sound that can kind of help reduce noise impacts. What's the price point of the housing? The question was, what is the price point of the housing? So we have not gone in depth on the specific potential, like pro forma in a deep way yet. Based on interviews with those who are more deeply embedded in the development, developers in and around Connecticut and who know this market, what we have been informed of is that there's likely to be the kind of most logical yield for this kind of financial project makeup as condos and senior housing. We do also know that there's a deep affordability crisis nationally, and so there's a broader conversation around affordable housing. We did not pinpoint this site as a site for affordable housing, but that is not something that has been a kind of deep part of this project, and it will need to be studied in more depth as a next step.
Was there ever any consideration for access to town with another bridge or something further up?
I'll let Liba take this question.
We've needed a bridge for years. I and the mayor's here too, and Jack Healy, our public works director, is here. I do not believe that the DOT will be investing in another bridge over the Housatonic River this century. maybe at the end of this century, but I don't think so, Karen. It's the cost is incredible now. Years ago you could have maybe built a bridge for $4 million. Now you need, Jack, $400 million? A lot of money. And for the state to allocate that money, I just don't see it happening. And obviously the town can't afford to build that bridge. We do have the Boardman Bridge that some people, you could take it north instead of cutting over Bridge Street. And if more people did that and then cut down, it might add maybe another 30 seconds or so to your drive, but it would ease up some traffic on Bridge Street as well.
There are talk about railroad. This has been going on for a long time. I am vehemently against it. People hate me for it, but if anybody's been waiting in line to get over the bridge and now they want to have a stop Have you considered that? Because there's a real push to get the railroad station and a train going through. That would be an absolute nightmare.
The question was whether or not consideration of the restoration of rail at the town center was considered as part of the project. In our first public workshop, several people did bring that up, but it was not an explicit part of our project. And I see the mayor has his hand raised, so if you would like to address this, that'd be great.
Mike, you want me to go up there?
If you could, please. Yeah, no one's going to hear from here.
The Western Council of Governments, who we're part of, which is WestCog. So we are the northern tip of WestCog. It's us, Sherman, goes all the way down into Danbury, Wilton, Ridgefield, New Canaan, Stanford, whatever. And the reason why I bring that up is they're doing a study on the rail. The study would have the last train station being New Milford. It would also include Brookfield. That study won't be completed or anything done, according to the state of Connecticut. The earliest would be the year 2070. So there you go. You just answered your question.
And then, Susan, nothing says the stop would be in downtown New Milford. It could be further south in New Milford.
But it's still the tracks. People still have to stop.
Well, the tracks are there, yeah, because there's still freight service ongoing.
But it's very rare. But I'm just saying, if it's a train schedule where it's going to be periodically stopping, it will be really hard.
Yeah. Steve, and then Lisa, and then we'll adjourn and go in the back room. The back room, as I call it, yes. Steve.
Is the 86 additional spaces the maximum you think you can put in? Because I was thinking, while I understand your scope is related to the riverfront redevelopment, and one of the aerial pictures you had up showed two parcels, one on the corner of Bridge Street, one on the corner of Main Street, that had former gas stations that are just sitting kind of basically derelict at this point, and redeveloping those into something nice and having to put parking in on those sites would kind of render them kind of useless in many ways. You just won't get any decent redevelopment. So if you can add additional parking in there, that would have some relief for the downtown and help some of the other merchants as well.
So the question and comment was if there's ways to get additional parking outside of our scope here onto other parcels in the downtown. They're privately owned right now, and I think are in the redevelopment area. Well, I'll be honest with you, the committee keeps pushing and pushing, and Langan has come up with more spaces than they had previously, and it all kind of depends upon how the private development comes into fruition. There's land there that maybe wouldn't be developed but used for parking, because that whole development piece is still kind of up in the air depending on market conditions and who steps forward and with what plan. So yes, there is a possibility. And then Mr. Mullen.
I just want to say it looks fantastic. Let's go.
Louder, I can hear you.
It looks fantastic. Let's go.
David, did you hear that comment? What was it? It's louder. It's fantastic. Let's go. Thank you. And Lisa, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so we raised so much money with grants, and how much more do you think is needed, or is there leftover money from the grants not applied yet?
No, all the grants that we've received will be expended by the end of the project here.
Okay, and in addition, you find yourself needing more?
Well, we will be needing more money as the project moves forward towards implementation. WXY will be putting together a proposed budget for us, and we'll be all looking at potential funding sources. We've already identified one or two that would help maybe with building the roadways, the new roadway, and there are state grants for parkland, for trails, for all kinds of different things. So between that and perhaps some private investment and private donors.
And I just wanted to say thank you, because I know how hard it is to get grants, and how much effort and work it takes to apply for them. And I really wanted to say thank you to you.
Thank you. Thanks to the whole committee and to the town, because the town's the one who applies for the grants. We just ask them to do that. So thank you to the mayor and the town council as well. So I think we can go into the next room. David's going to tell you, I guess we don't have to tell you anything. We're just going to go in the next room. There is a table there if you want to sit and talk and write comments on comment cards. For those of you at home, once again, if you have comments, you can email them to riverfront@newmilfordct.com, or you can mail them to Riverfront Town Hall, 10 Main Street, New Milford. So thank everybody for coming. Thank you to WXYZ and Langan. What a job they did. Thank you.